I'm Val Bercovici, Chief AI Officer at Weka.
And my name is Elisa Chen. I am a data scientist at Meta on the AI infrastructure team.
So you spoke today, Elisa, and why don't you tell us what you spoke about? Because it was a really fascinating introduction you were just giving me earlier on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, by the way. Earlier today, I was giving a talk about the gap that we currently face in between AI innovation and the long procurement cycles with hardware. So maybe to put this more concretely, there's like a huge challenge in sort of like how do we balance AI innovation that is moving so quickly. Like, models get iterated on like a monthly and even weekly basis.
Exactly.
But hardware, like procurement, from like fulfillment to actually like making it production ready takes a very long time. So how do you balance like these two acts? How do we make sure that like sort of like capacity planning is keeping at the right pace with AI innovation?
I love this topic because it's so important and it's one I really haven't dived into deeply at all. So definitely a chance to learn more here today. Like, do you have to be a bit of clairvoyant to predict the future, or is there a bit of a science to understanding there's going to be a lot of variability in the algorithms? And yet, to your point, at this scale, you've got to get the infrastructure right, you got to get the supply chain right, you got to line it up in time.
Yeah, good questions. There's a lot that we don't know in today's world, but what we can do is like start setting up like the correct data foundations, the right telemetry, the right even like defining the right metrics, benchmarks that we can like goal against. For instance, like what is good enough? We don't necessarily always need the top of shelf like
Right.
machinery
Yeah.
to power like inference. We have to think about
It's
what are the
almost a lazy
trade-offs.
answer to just buy the most expensive, biggest of everything,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
yeah.
Which is tempting because it's like we do want to, be at the frontier and we do want to like be the most efficient,
Yeah.
but that's not always needed. So like what is the strategy that we want to deploy? That's something that, we can think about separately on its own. And given that we have like good measurements, which in itself is already really challenging because
Yes.
like, you don't have all the definitions necessarily in mind yet. Like for instance, how do you think about capacity ROI?
Yeah.
Yeah, like one machine that is used to train like multiple models, and these models have different performances,
Yeah.
and how do they
There
translate to
is
business
no
goals?
observability industry really that's mature for GPUs or for
Yeah,
these workloads yet.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's a really tough problem. And without like, the data foundations or just like the right measurement, like I would say instrumentation, it's hard to make those decisions. Like as I say, as a data scientist, you need data, good
Yeah,
data,
yeah,
quality data to make decisions,
exactly.
which doesn't necessarily exist. So, what are some other strategies that you can deploy? So there are like some of other like levers I would say in probably like everyone's back corner that people can use, such as given that there are gaps in this knowledge and you can don't necessarily have all the
Yeah,
information for predicting what you might need in the future.
yeah,
For immediate needs, there are like ways that you can go around, like elastic, resource
yeah,
supplies,
yeah,
using GPU as a service. These offer like some flexibility for
yeah.
your capacity planning, but on top of that, you can also start thinking about like efficiency as another lever. So, one thing about the industry is that like we are constantly figuring ways to become better at like what we do.
Mhm.
So we have like hardware that is tailored to different workloads.
Yeah,
Like you have, you know, your H100s that
yeah,
are like dense GPUs used for training foundational
yeah,
models.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
you have like, your A100s that are probably better suited for like more lightweight
Yeah,
models or
yeah.
fine-tuning purposes. So, doing that like matching between the right hardware as well as your like workload is
Yeah.
very crucial. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so efficiency. So I think you kind of like learn to become more efficient with your like uh machinery in itself, and then you learn that, oh, I can actually train this a lot faster, this model
Yeah,
specifically with this hardware, so now I can free up this for other
yeah,
use cases.
exactly.
Yeah, that's another lever that you can use. And lastly, I just want to like mention that I think dynamic quota
Hmm.
allocations is extremely important. So I don't think there will ever be a case where you are using your capacity at 95% utilization. That is a dream state that
Yeah, yeah.
like most companies cannot achieve. So, understanding which sort of like teams are underutilizing their capacity and,
Yeah.
allocating that to maybe like more high usage teams, I think
Right.
is also a good strategy to keep in
Yeah,
mind.
so many follow-up questions there because it's just
Yeah, I sorry, I
fascinating.
just rambled,
And
I
I
think,
love
for a
it.
long time.
So I'm curious, elasticity, I have a lot of experience in the cloud, CPU cloud world. Elasticity in the GPU world is very different with like the giant model sizes and large data sets than elasticity in the CPU world, so to speak. What have been sort of some of your main, lessons learned in these differences?
Yeah, I think that's a good like point as well to make. Like I do think there's like a lot of dependencies within like
Yes.
the machinery as well. Like you can't just like separate, let's say like GPU from like, memory or like IO or
Right.
storage. Like
Yeah.
all of these have to like
Very
play
tightly coupled
together.
in this world.
Yeah,
Yeah,
tightly
yeah.
coupled. Like even if you have, let's say, like more GPU, it doesn't mean that you can free it up necessarily
Exactly.
for other workloads. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is a tricky, I will say.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there's probably like some work that can be done in terms of like how do you build your workloads? Like,
Hmm.
how do we think about using like these clusters and for what workloads
Yeah,
and try to keep them as like, I guess, separate as possible,
yeah,
but
yeah.
obviously acknowledging that that is a very tough problem to
It is.
solve.
And I saw this hands-on. I was at a really fun meetup, a PyTorch meetup at Meta on the
Ah,
campus there like 6 months ago. And it was one of the first examples I've seen publicly, and now it's really widely known around disaggregated prefill and decode. And now you have, at scale, very high capacity or a lot of capacity management for prefill clusters, and then
mm,
distinctly, a lot of separate capacity management for decode clusters.
mm.
And I met a scale that was necessary even like 6 months ago, and this is very young and embryonic, but it's becoming like a best practice right now. So that was just like one tangible example for sure that I saw at Meta.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So in terms of, I use, Instagram a lot. I see a lot of these cool, and then WhatsApp, who doesn't use WhatsApp? So a lot of these really cool AI features, you're getting a lot of data, metadata you're able to collect from that. How is that informing these metrics you talked about?
Yeah, that's like the user side. I think this is
Yeah.
more like probably related to
Does it feed into, or is it so disconnected that you don't see that sort of roll up of that data?
Uh, I'm trying to think like like we take data privacy very
Yeah, yeah. I'm
seriously.
taking totally anonymized metadata in this
Yeah,
case, not the data itself.
completely.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that would probably be more related to like the training side itself. So this
yeah,
is information that would
yeah,
like inform our like model improvements.
yeah,
Obviously, like it depends on like we don't use every data piece that we get
yeah.
for it will be selected, I would say, like
Right.
filtered for different use
Yeah.
cases. Yeah, but
And I'm thinking like from a capacity manager's perspective, like 9 to 5 in India time, there's a lot of WhatsApp usage, right? So that means we need to have a certain amount of capacity for the AI features we want to offer, like in that region. That's the sort of the kind of metrics I'm just imagining here as you're describing it.
yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah,
Like figuring out like, your capacity load for different
yeah,
regions or even just like, peak hours
yeah, yeah,
is very challenging.
yeah.
And different regions I think also have just I would say like a different because there are also policies. Like I think
Yes,
with the EU, for instance, like
yes,
you have your GDPR, so you
yeah.
need to like make sure that like your capacity is compliant with like
Yeah.
their requirements there. But versus like other
That's
regions,
such a
it's
great
maybe
point. Like
less.
capacity
Yeah.
planning is not global, it's not homogeneous universal, it's very much driven by policy, which is driven by jurisdiction.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
not the same, it's not cookie cutter, right?
It's not
Yeah,
cookie cutter, yeah.
yeah, at meta scale for sure.
Yeah.
Really cool. What other cool topics, have you seen at the show today that caught your attention?
Yeah, I have been talking to like a few others, just sort of like players in the field.
Hmm.
I'm actually not like really familiar with the space, but I learned like how there are various ways that you can actually power your data center.
Mm,
So I learned more about like fuel cells, I believe. So these
yeah,
are like new ways I think you can like power your data centers that are like a lot more cost effective and like a lot more scalable
yeah,
and an alternative to like the
yeah.
grids that we
And
are.
maybe agile, which is like a really big problem too. So
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
And it's interesting to see like how this technology that has been present in other like industries
yeah,
can be leveraged for like AI.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, no, right now it seems like when you really zoom out, the ultimate bottleneck is energy. And so you mentioned efficiency earlier on, like, the token per watt classically, right?
Yeah.
that efficiency, with very hard energy budgets, even if they're gigawatt scale, they're still fixed. That seems to be like, the ultimate benchmark that we all have to measure ourselves against. So
Yeah, that is true. And
yeah.
energy isn't cheap by any means.
No,
So
no, not at all. And again, it's not consistently priced anywhere, right? It's
yeah.
variable by time of day, by region, and so forth. So capacity planning for that must be a full-time job and then some.
Yeah, we have dedicated teams for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Elise. This is really a fascinating insight into,
Yeah.
what it's like. And again, this under-discussed topic of capacity planning and management, for AI, particularly at the scale we all aspire to someday. So
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.